Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. Having cleaned up from the previous episode, we are going to dig back into the ender chest and finally pick up the mace, because today we're going to take a proper look at what it takes to use the mace, and also probably a little bit of stuff about wind charges, and the breeze rods breaking down into wind charges is going to be essential to that as well, because the mace and the wind charge really go hand in hand, but each can be used pretty effectively on their own. The first thing we're going to do is head up to my enchanting setup in the attic space of my starter house, and we're going to see what enchantments we can put on the mace natively in the enchanting table. So we're going to throw the mace in here, grab some lapis, and already we're seeing enchantments that have not been available prior to Minecraft 1.21. These are enchantments that are only available on the mace. Density is the first one I want to look at, but breach is another one. So density and breach are the two that you can normally get from the enchanting table. There is a third enchantment for the mace, wind burst, which can only be acquired through going into trial chambers and trying to get the enchanted book from ominous vaults. And in fact, according to the table of probability that they've listed on the Minecraft wiki, the chance of getting that enchanted book is lower than the chance of getting the heavy cores. So the heavy core that you use to craft the mace is not even the most rare thing you get from ominous vaults. In fact, the absolute rarest is a block of diamond, but second on that list is the Book of Windburst. And you're only likely to get a single level of Windburst, so if you want higher levels, you're going to have to combine those books. But either way, Density is an enchantment that increases the damage that the mace does the further you fall before swinging it, because the whole mechanic around the mace is to fall from a great height and hit something right before you land. Breach is a slightly different take on that, which only applies to mobs or players wearing armor. It ignores a certain percentage of the armor's protection in order to deal more damage. So breach is a really useful one in PvP situations, or potentially if you're around a lot of armored mobs in, say, a minigame map. But obviously here in survival Minecraft, we're not too concerned with breach, because while there will be some mobs that show up with armor, and you can have more armor in ominous trials in trial chambers, it's going to be more effective for us to deal damage to a broad range of stuff, and that's where I think Density is going to be the better enchantment. So we're going to put that on here, and we have Unbreaking 3 on that as well, because of course the mace is going to have durability, so having Unbreaking 3 on it is a really good thing. Unbreaking 3 will make sure that the mace lasts 4 times as long before it breaks, but we do want to make sure we've got Mending on this as well, so I'm going to go and trade with one of the villagers in my trading hall who should be able to give us a Mending book for this mace too. Now let's grab Mending from Mendelssohn down here. That's the book we still get for 1 emerald, because this was our original librarian villager. And before we combine that, let's talk about what other enchantments we could get on the mace, because there are 2 other damage enchantments that you can apply to the mace that you might already be familiar with. Both Smite and Bane of Arthropods are possible to apply to the mace, although, and this is an important note, they are mutually exclusive with Density and Breach. So you can only have one of the 4 different damage enhancing enchantments, whether it's Breach, Density, Smite, or Bane of Arthropods. You cannot have any combination of those 4 on the mace at the same time. So while I think it'd be really cool to have a smashy weapon that also deals extra damage to spiders to complement the fact that we have a smite axe and a sharpness sword already, unfortunately it's not going to be possible to do that on this mace now that we've enchanted it with Density. And no, unfortunately you cannot put sharpness on a mace in order to increase its damage across the board. Density is the only enchantment that will do that. But now we've got Mending on that mace, that's looking a lot better. And there are actually 2 more enchantments we could apply to this if we wanted to. The first of which is Fire Aspect. Now, I don't use Fire Aspect on my sword, and the main reason for that is because anything that I hit with the sword, if it stays alive and manages to deal damage back to me, could set me on fire. The other reason is Endermen, because Endermen teleport around really erratically when you attack them with fire and they get set on fire, so those can be a little unpredictable afterwards, so I prefer not to have Fire Aspect on my sword. Putting Fire Aspect on a mace is a bit of a risky proposition, because most of the time you're looking to one-shot stuff with the mace because of the amount of damage it does. I know it says 6 attack damage on there, believe me, we're going to be dealing a lot more than that very soon. But if an extra tick or 2 of fire damage might deal a little extra, you might want to consider putting Fire Aspect on your mace. I'm going to leave it for now, mostly because I don't know where I have a Fire Aspect book. I'm sure I have them around, but not that interested in it today. The final enchantment is something that you might not want to consider putting on the mace, and that's because it's actually a curse. You can put cursor vanishing on a mace similar to other tools, and that'll just mean that it vanishes when you die instead of dropping as an item, which is not what you want considering how difficult it is to get hold of the heavy core, and that there are, technically speaking, a finite number of ominous vaults that you could open in your world. But now we've got this thing all enchanted up, we need to talk a little bit about what the mace can do. And like I said, 6 attack damage doesn't really feel like a whole lot when we've got a netherite sword with sharpness 5 that's dealing 8 attack damage plus a little extra on top with sharpness. Likewise, we've got a netherite axe that deals 10 attack damage plus what smite can do. So how is the mace really going to set itself apart? To answer that question, I'm going to hop down into this cave where I know there's a decently dark environment that should have some mobs that we can attack. Let's take these zombies as an example. If we come over here and hit the zombie, we're dealing a couple of points of damage there. You can see the hearts come off the zombie, but the mace takes so long to recharge until it's ready to hit something again that you're actually not dealing a whole lot of damage if you're using it at the same speed as you would something like a sword. It took 4 or 5 hits to take out those zombies, and the density enchantment didn't really seem to be helping that at all. Now, the trick to the mace is to fall from height. By default, it's going to do a little extra damage if you are just jumping at something and dealing something more like a crit. Let's take this creeper, for example. Jumping from a couple of blocks and hitting the creeper, you'll notice a bunch of particles exploded from around me when I did that, and the creeper got one-shot. An axe crit from my netherite axe won't even one-shot a creeper, and the netherite sword certainly won't, even though it has sharpness. Let's see if we can do the same with this enderman, actually. I've looked at the enderman, I'm going to peel it up a few blocks, and let's see what happens if we drop on the enderman and smash its head in from above. There we go, we got a little extra damage, and it should only take a couple more hits for the enderman to die. I wasn't quite high up enough, I don't think, to get the full one-shot on that enderman, but the cool thing about the mace is that its damage increases per block fallen, and that damage can really ramp up very quickly. Let's see if there's anything on this lower level of the cave that we could drop on and smash. I wonder if there's anything down there by the mine shaft. That's a pretty risky drop, but the results would basically one-shot most mobs in the game. There's a couple of creepers wandering around down here underneath me, and this is the reason I came to this cave, is that I knew there are a bunch of ledges that I might be able to drop off and smash attack something, but the problem is you do have to be concerned about whether or not you can hit it. I'm going to head up the waterfall to try that again with these creepers and zombies that are now starting to pile up underneath me, and let's see if we can score a hit on this zombie. There we go, and you'll notice as I fell that time, I took no fall damage, because one of the key mechanics of the mace is regardless of how far you have fallen, if you manage to hit a mob before you hit the ground, your fall damage resets. If you're able to perform a smash attack on an enemy like that, you'll hear this big sound effect, and you'll also notice that some other enemies get knocked back from the area around that. A ton of particles will fly out from the area around you, and the results look pretty spectacular. Now, the way the mace calculates the damage is actually on a little bit of a curve. It does the most damage for falling just a couple of blocks, and then it adds extra damage for each of the next few blocks you fall, and slightly less extra damage for each block you fall after that. So really, the majority of the damage boost you're getting from the mace happens in the first 8 blocks of your fall. Although density increases the damage for each block that you fall, so the density enchantment we have on here will actually increase the damage by 2 points for every block that I fall, meaning that by the time I've fallen 8 blocks, I should be dealing about 44 points of damage. That's 6 attack damage from the mace, an additional 12 damage for the first 3 blocks we fall, an additional 10 damage for the next 5 blocks we fall, and then density on top of that. Basically 8 blocks multiplied by 2, because that's the damage multiplier we get from density 4. That totals out to 44 damage, which is enough to kill a regular unarmored zombie 2 times over. So when you're using the mace, it is in your best interests to make sure that you fall a few blocks before you hit anything, because that's going to rank up this damage to the point where it's even superior to something like a sharpness netherite axe. Here's the thing though, sometimes you're not going to have the advantage of great terrain all around you, and if you want to use the mace a little bit more effectively, it's going to be harder to find something to jump off, especially at short notice when you're surrounded by mobs that can change their height and zero out some of that damage. It's going to be fairly difficult to stop and pillar up, especially when the mobs are like skeletons and prefer to keep you at range, and then after that, diving off that pillar while you're being shot at is actually kind of difficult. So for the mace to really be effective, we need an additional tool that's going to help us gain a little bit of height quickly and go on the offensive. And that is why we're going to head back to my storage room and grab some wind charges, so that we can take a look at how to use wind charges and how they're most effective in combination with the mace. First of all, in the light of day, let's take a look at how to use a wind charge. The first thing one can do with a wind charge is throw it in a similar way that you can something like an ender pearl. The perfect test subject, the Wandering Trader, is over here. Let's use a wind charge on the Wandering Trader, and he's on a cliff right now with his llamas, so let's see if we can get him off that cliff. In a similar way to when you're fighting a breeze, throwing a wind charge at a target will knock it back. So in this case, we can get the Wandering Trader off that cliff, and his llamas aren't especially happy with me now. Wind charges thrown by the player have a much less impactful blast radius than the ones thrown by the breeze, so you do need to make sure that you hit the target to have the best effect, although you can sometimes have the wind charge simply land on scenery nearby, and that should deal a little bit of knockback. Here's a great example. Let's throw it behind the Wandering Trader there, and you'll notice he gets knocked up into the air pretty emphatically, but that's also something we can take advantage of as a player. If I'm running around with wind charges in my hand and I explode one underneath me as I jump, you'll notice that I get a little bit of lift from that. And the most effective way of activating that is by jumping and right-clicking with the wind charge almost simultaneously, like so. There we go, we got the advancement that time. Who needs rockets? Because that lifted me up at least 8 blocks. I would estimate that that was 8 or 9. Yeah, we can jump higher than the frogs now. Although, where's the green one gone? I'm fairly certain I had 2 green ones tied up around here. But this is the technique I was talking about, where if you want to ready the mace mid-fall, you should be able to deal a pretty effective smash attack. Although, you'll notice that when I switched over to the mace, it took a little while to charge up the attack, meaning you might not be able to deal maximum damage if you're just falling back down from your initial wind charge leap. You might want to prime it so that you have a little bit of extra fall to deal with. Although once again, the trick is going to be guaranteeing any sort of accuracy, because if I smash the grass around here, then that llama's not going to be taking any damage. In fact, I'm the one that's going to be taking any damage. You will notice, however, that if you use a wind charge to propel yourself up that far, I didn't take any fall damage when I landed. And that's not to say wind charges will cancel out any fall damage. They haven't just invalidated Elytra and slow falling potions in this, because if I wind charge myself off this cliff, you'll notice that I take a little bit of fall damage when I land, and it actually starts calculating the fall damage as soon as I fall below the height that I took off from using that wind charge. So let's say I'm standing up here on top of this little grassy cliff. I use a wind charge from here, propels me up a few blocks, but not enough to give me any fall damage. Once I fall below this point, there's a fall of about 5 or 6 blocks on the way down here. If I fall down that part, it's going to give me 5 or 6 blocks worth of fall damage, which is only about a heart and a half without protection enchantments and decent armor, so I'm clearly not taking enough damage for that to be a concern. All I'm saying is if we're using this to smash attack something, we better make sure we have the mace ready for when we land. I feel bad that I've taken out the llamas, but somehow missed the Wandering Trader. What's this guy selling? A bit of glowstone? Let's see if we can queue up a little smash attack on him. Yep, there we go. And judging by the amount that the wind charges are depleting in my inventory, you can probably tell how many takes that took. So wind charges and the mace are clearly a pretty interesting match. We can do a lot with that combination, but it requires a little bit of skill and timing to be able to execute the wind charge leap, let the mace charge up, and hopefully deal a decent amount of damage when you land. Mechanics like these are inevitably going to have a bit of a risk-reward balance, and while we executed a good smash attack on that cow, once again, it took me a few wind charges to be able to pull that off. The fact that targets can often move is also a pretty big concern, but from a high enough height, the wind charge mace combo is going to be pretty lethal. You might also be wondering, is it possible to incorporate Elytra into this to gain a huge amount of height and then come down with a smash attack, let's say on these pillagers? Unfortunately, it is not. Or rather, if you're interested in flying up with Elytra, you better be prepared to take those Elytra off before you deal that smash attack, and that's going to put you in hot water if you don't know where you're landing, like me. But you better believe now we have this mace enchanted, I'm absolutely going to try it. So let's see if we can execute a proper smash attack on one of these pillagers. Yeah, we got it! Unbelievable! That overkill advancement means I've dealt over 50 hearts of damage in a single hit using the mace, and that was... oh, that's fun. That's so fun. So while you can gain height using Elytra, you cannot be gliding with Elytra when you return to ground. Even with a little extra velocity, it's not going to deal any additional damage with the mace. We're going to kill off the rest of these pillagers because I want this ominous bottle to add to my collection so we can go back and do some more ominous trials, because my hope is that we'll be able to find the wind burst enchantment, and that's kind of the missing link with what's happening with the mace here. Similar to the effect you get with a wind charge, the wind burst enchantment flings you back up into the air with a forceful gust of wind every time you deal a successful smash attack, which means you can hop between mobs, dealing concurrent smash damage and being flung into the air each time you do. Not only that, but each level of Wind Burst gets you an additional 7 blocks of height, up to a maximum level of 3, so you can actually be flung back up into the air 21 blocks if you deal a successful smash attack, which is a great way to do a hit and run if you're in a precipitous area like that cave we were in earlier. But I think it's going to make for some pretty amazing trick shots, and is also going to make it easier for players to take down some hard-hitting and tanky mobs like the Warden. Now that we've acquired the Mace in our world, I have a new goal, and that is to one-shot every mob in the game at some point or another, where it is passive, whether it is the boss mobs, something like an Elder Guardian could be really fun to attempt. I want to see just how far we can take some of this action with the Mace. It's a lot of fun playing around with this thing. Is it going to replace a sword? Probably not, because a sword is going to be a lot more versatile in a variety of situations, but is the Mace fun to use? I think definitely. Once we mastered this thing, we're going to be able to run around bonking stuff on the head all we want, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun doing that. I'm going to keep my eye out in future trial chambers to see if we can get hold of some more ominous vaults that will hopefully give us a Wind Burst book, and then we'll come back to taking another look at the Mace when I can guarantee that I'll be able to show you the Wind Burst effect in action. But for now, I think we need to sign off doing something a little more spectacular, so I'm going to grab 4 iron blocks. So for the record, an iron golem has about 100 points of health. It's 50 hearts. I think it's probably, at this point, the 4th most health any mob in the game has. The highest is probably the Warden or the Ender Dragon. I forget which has more, but I think it might be the Warden. And then the Wither also has a pretty hefty amount of health. It has more in Bedrock than it does in Java. But we're going to spawn in an Iron Golem, and I reckon we need to be at least 20 blocks up in the air. The Golem is going to make it difficult for me by walking away. But yeah, I think 25 blocks would probably be the minimum here. Let's see if we can drop in, and yep, I've immediately missed. Maybe we'll smash it from the roof of the blacksmith's house instead, since it seems to be wandering over in that direction. And from the roof over here, let's see if we can land that. Yes, there we go. Oh my goodness. Honestly, I think the most fun you can have with the Mace is dealing a smash attack to something that has a really meaty death noise. Which is kind of a hideous concept when you think about it too hard, but the fact that the Mace has that enormous smash sound combined with the noise that an Iron Golem makes when it dies, that's pretty intense. And of course, the iron investment for this adrenaline is something to be considered. We got 4 iron ingots back after putting 4 blocks in, but it's all in the name of science, and I doubt I'll be smash attacking Iron Golems more permanently. This is just a fun little experiment to see how much damage we can do, and the answer is a lot. That was over 100 points of damage in a single hit. You might be asking yourself, is there a cap on damage you can deal with the Mace? The answer is no, there actually isn't. You can fall from world height to bedrock, and as long as you hit something, you're going to be dealing a massive amount of damage to that. It's clearly enough to kill something like the Warden, especially now we have the density enchantment on this as well. So I think we're going to be doing some pretty spectacular stuff with this in future. We're going to have to really set up some of the trick shots to make sure I land them first time though. But folks, that is where we're going to leave this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you've enjoyed this first look at the Mace. Believe me, we are just getting started, because the Wind Burst, enchantment, and a little bit more time with the Mace is going to lead to some pretty fun videos in future. But for now, thank you so much for watching. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care. Bye for now.